Hello, I'm Erik Hansen, a political science major at VCU with a concentration in government and politics, and I'm here today with Chris
Piper.
Thank you for being here today with us, Chris.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure, and it's so nice to meet you.
I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Erik.
You're welcome. So to start off, could you tell us a little bit about how you came into politics and your work with the Virginia Public Access Project?
Well, it's interesting. My first memory of politics was I was 7 years old, and Ronald Reagan was up for re-election against Walter Mondale. And I was only, like I said, 7 years old, and I just remember my grandparents always talking about how much they disliked Reagan. And so I came home on election night, and I asked my mom, I said, "Who did you vote for?" And she says, "Well, never tell your grandparents, but I voted for Reagan." And she probably doesn't want that public. But anyway, I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, like this could end our family. Like maybe we'll never be able to go to our grandparents' house again. So from that moment on, I just remember being very, very interested in politics. And so as the years went on, I realized how much I enjoyed, American political thought. I loved the founding of the country and the process that led to the Constitution, and I was really enthralled by how the founders came up with our system of government. And as I went on into college, I actually started as a history major, and I found out that I really just liked political theory and political science. So changed my major, came here to VCU, and really found a home in the political science department. And the one thing that I knew as I was in college is that I didn't really belong to a political party. There was not a politician that I was really excited about, that I was ready to pledge my life to. And I'm all for people who want to do that, but it just wasn't in my blood. I had both sides of the aisle and an understanding, and I couldn't just align myself one way or the other. So I looked around for what it was I could do that would land in that kind of working in politics, but not for politicians. And after a while, I found my home in elections, campaign finance, and working at the state government. And I got to work around politicians. I got to work in the General Assembly or with the General Assembly. I got to learn a lot about the process, but at the same time, I wasn't aligned with one party. And as the years went on, I found a real niche being a nonpartisan, and that's been a pretty good career so far.
Okay. What would you say is the most important skill for someone who wants to have a career in like the same nonpartisan field in politics as you?
I think the biggest thing is figuring out. I obviously have political beliefs. I get to vote.
Yeah.
And I vote in primaries even. And the important thing is that when you're walking into the door of work, or in today's environment, when you flip on your computer in your pajamas, because we're working from home. But when you do that, when you're making decisions, when you're thinking about how to implement policies, procedures, whatever, that you're able to separate yourself from those political beliefs. And really be focused on what is going to be the best for all folks that you're serving, and and being able to understand enough about policy and understand enough about law that you can implement those policies, implement those laws, and do so in a way that is free of that partisan bias. It's a hard thing to do. I can't say I've been successful 100% of the time, but it's not about overall 100% success rate. But it is really important to know that. And I think the biggest thing you can do is really rely on other folks, and have diversity of opinion just within your own office to be a check on you.
Okay.
I regularly call up Republican friends or Democratic friends and the people on my team and say, what do you think? Are we leaning too far to the right? Are we leaning too far to the left? Just as that gut check.
Okay, that's a very healthy mindset for sure. And how does one stay nonpartisan in today's political climate?
I get this question a lot. Like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it's easy. It's particularly hard the more divided that we've become. For me, it's kind of like exercise. The more you do it, it's repetition. The more you do it, the more it just becomes like habit. It's something that becomes something that you just have to do. But I think starting out, it's a particularly difficult thing to figure out how you can clamp down those feelings. So I think it's really I got into campaign finance. That was really my first role in state government and politics. And the thing that I think helped in that regard is that you really don't have a choice. Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Green Party, they were all filing with us, and they all had to comply with the same law. And so in that case, there's a rule book, that you have to follow. Right. And when you're, and it's not a rule book that is partisan one way or the other. Now, it might be partisan in the way that, politicians wrote those policies, and you may disagree with them, but it is the law of the land, right? So if you're just following that to a T and not overstepping your bounds, I think you're going to have success there. I think if you do that, if you're working in an area where you really do have to stay in that lane of implementing the law, I think then it becomes like second nature to just, I'm going to be focused on what's the best thing, what's the law say, and not what my particular belief is. For example, I'll be 100% honest with you. I came from federal government, filing campaign finance reports for a trade association. I, at the time, believed very strongly in limits, but I came to Virginia and there were none. No campaign finance limits. You can give millions of dollars if you want to a single candidate. Corporations can give. And I came in thinking, we need to put in some limits. But there aren't any. And it's not my job to put in limits. It's my job to implement the law as it was written. So being focused on that aspect really helped me gain that muscle, that nonpartisan muscle.
You are the director of the Virginia Public Access Project. What are some challenges that it faces in maintaining nonpartisanship in this polarized Virginian politics?
Yeah, it's just a tough world to be in at the moment. I think one of the advantages that Virginia Public Access Project, also known as VPAP, which is not my favorite, but what are you going to do? I took it over after 26 years, so it's just kind of ingrained as VPAP in this state. But speaking of which, it was founded in 1997. It has for those now 28 years really focused on being nonpartisan, and I think some of that advantage was it was founded prior to what we now see as this kind of hyper-partisanship in this country, and just really working hard over the years to maintain that. And it's a challenge because I think the tendency now is to paint anything with a blue or a red brush, and and there are times that we get painted that way, but we always say it's a good day when we've upset Democrats and Republicans. We've done a good job what we're trying to do. It really comes down to being very thoughtful. And like I said earlier, it's doing those gut checks. It's checking in with people who have opinions, that have strong opinions on one side or the other, to make sure that you're not overstepping. And I think that that's a really critical aspect of what we do. I'll tell you, we put out these data visualizations, a couple times a week. And we're really careful to only provide enough context so you know what you're looking at and where the data came from. But we're not trying to skew your opinion on what that data means one way or the other. We're just there to provide the information. And we spend quite a bit of time going through that language and ensuring that it is just bland enough that it's not going to influence somebody one way or the other. And it's a tough thing. We are certainly helped by the fact that we're a long-standing organization. We've had this nonpartisanship representation for such a long time, or reputation for such a long time, and so we just rely on that as much as we can.
Awesome. How do organizations like VPAP fundraise and get money to provide this information to the public?
Yeah, it's an ongoing process. VPAP doesn't take government money. We're 100% funded by individuals. We have some events, so we have some corporations that do help sponsor those events, but the majority of our funding comes from individuals. And I think that one of the things we've had to counter is since I've come on board is a lot of people just take it for granted that it is a government organization, that it is just somehow connected with the government, and so it'll always be there. And so we have to remind folks that this is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3, and it could just up and disappear one day if we don't have the funding. So reminding folks of that, the value and what they're willing to pay for that kind of information that we provide. It's a critical aspect of what we do. But like any other nonprofit, it's a struggle. We're certainly not, curing cancer. We're not feeding the hungry. And those are all really important things. But, what we do is really important. But it's a challenging environment to raise money in, especially, when it comes to nonpartisanship, and sometimes we're victims of the political wins, just Republicans get excited because they won and they're like, okay, let's help out, and Democrats get downtrodden because they've lost, or vice versa. We've seen those trends over time. But overall, VPAP has had a lot of success raising funds, and we just need to continue to do so.
That's awesome. And what is an unforgettable experience you've had in your work with VPAP?
Oh man,
something that brings you so much joy that you've done, or something like that.
Well, I'll give you two real quick ones. The first one is every morning, and we've been doing this since 2011. And prior to that, there was a nice man who was a husband of the state senator Mary Margaret Whipple. And in 1996, he started scouring websites, newspaper websites, and collecting the day's Virginia state political news. And he started sending out this email to interested folks. And whether they were Republicans or Democrats, people would sign up, and he would add them to the list, and he would send out this email. Well, in 2011, he decided he needed to move on from that, and he decided to give the list to VPAP. At the time, it was about 2,000. We're almost at 25,000 now. But every single morning, Monday through Friday, during the General Assembly session and close to election time, it's Monday through Saturday, we curate the day's political news. And we grab it from the newspaper websites. There's all sorts of other media websites out, as you know now, that we put together. And it goes out every day as a free service at around 7:30 in the morning. And you can sign up at vpap.org. But one of the things that surprised me about it was how much work goes into it, and how hard it is to ensure nonpartisanship in today's really challenging media environment. And so we have two people. They get up about 4:30 in the morning, and they start pulling together the news. I get on early in the morning to answer any questions, call any balls or strikes about particular articles that we need to say, are we going to carry this or we're not going to carry this? And then we send it out in the morning. The hardest part about it is because of today's media environment. Newspapers that used to dominate our media and our information landscape are slowly becoming less and less, whether that's because of layoffs or what have you. You are also seeing a large segment of our society not trusting what we call traditional media. So you have a real challenging environment because a lot of people are getting their news and information from sites that kind of reinforce what they already believe. And so we have to be very careful about what we curate to ensure that we're meeting the moment when it comes to nonpartisanship. We are also very focused on journalism, so it's really important for us to ensure that whatever we include is actual, written by journalists, right? And it's not an opinion piece necessarily. We do include opinion pieces in certain instances. So that was the most surprising thing, how much time I spent on that particular issue. It's also the biggest service that we have. Like I said, over 25,000 subscribers. The second thing that I found really surprising or gratifying in this case, a longtime donor unfortunately passed away, but he left us a sizable gift of $170,000. And we decided that it was time for us to open a new program, and it's our civics education program that we now call Civics Navigator. And what we're doing is we're using the vast resources that VPAP has, and we're packaging those up and putting them in the hands of educators around the Commonwealth of Virginia. And it's really focused on civics education, government education, and the whole point is to help teachers better explain how state and local government works in comparison to the federal government. I think, and this is where I'm allowed to have an opinion, and I think a lot of people probably realize this, there's a lot of focus on national politics right now. And if you think about it, at the end of the day, national politics has very little to do on with your day-to-day. What's happening in Richmond and state government, what's happening in your board of supervisors meetings, your school board meetings, your city council meetings, what have you, that has way more of an impact on what you deal with day to day than anything that's happening in Washington. And yet what's happening in Washington gets this oversized focus. And also it's the most divisive. And so we thought, hey, if we can pull together our resources and get people to realize what's happening in Virginia, how it's impacting their lives, maybe we can focus on the things that really matter. And I bring that up because one of the visuals we did after the last General Assembly session is one of the most surprising things that I've seen. At the end of the session, we found that 80% of the votes, or 80% of the bills that came to the floor of the General Assembly, where the entire General Assembly voted on them, of those bills, 80% of them were passed nearly unanimous or unanimous. 80%. So that means 20% were partisan votes, that had a lot of opposition one way or the other. Some of them were bipartisan opposition. But the point being is that there were really only about 20% of the bills that were voted on that actually had any sort of discussion or concern. Now, there were a bunch of bills that didn't make it to the floor, but that's how it goes. The point is that overall, Virginia's government works really, really well. The legislature works really, really well together. There's definitely conflict between the legislature and the executive branch, but that's the way it's supposed to work. And I think that if we were to focus more on what's happening in Virginia at the Board of Supervisors, City Council, it would have a lot, I think we'd probably be in a lot better shape overall. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish with civics education, and it's something I'm excited to be a part of.
Sort of a federalism 101 kind of thing.
Federalism 101, and why you shouldn't worry about that as much as you should worry about state 101.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
On a more personal note, you went to VCU. How has that affected and shaped your success later in life?
Yeah, I think the main thing that I got from VCU is the reason I came here. I was raised in a kind of a liberal household on my mom's side, but my parents were separated. On my dad's side, there's a very conservative, religious kind of a household. I was exposed to both sides, so I got diversity of thought, and I got diverse opinions. And I think what was unique is it wasn't even in the same household, right? It was like I would go and I'd get one side of the story and I'd go to the other. I mean, my grandfather might have been, somewhat liberal in his thinking, but, he also got the Washington Post and the Washington Times. So he read both, so he would understand both sides. And so I came to VCU because I really was, taken aback by the fact that there was such a diverse student body, and that diversity really shaped me and got me prepared to lead, I think, in a number of different environments. First of all, to understand that there's a diversity of thought, that people have not just liberal and conservative views, but it's all over the place. And more importantly, as a leader, when you start to lead organizations down the road, realizing that having that diversity of thought makes you a better leader, and it provides you an opportunity to make better decisions. I always worked to surround myself with folks from different backgrounds. And it wasn't about checking a box, meeting a quota. It was really about, if I'm going to represent and provide services to the general public and the Commonwealth of Virginia, then I need to have folks around me that truly represent the Commonwealth of Virginia. Rural, Black, Hispanic, all the colors of the rainbow, and from all parts of the Commonwealth, and all of that background, and then even age, and all that diversity really can help shape you and help you make better decisions. VCU is a great place to be. You're also down the street. I'm literally walking distance from the General Assembly, and that helps out tremendously. But and clearly, I'm still here in Richmond, and I haven't really left, and I don't want to. So I think VCU has just been a tremendous launching pad for my career at the very end of the day.
Lastly, Chris, what is one book that you would recommend to somebody that has influenced you either in your political sphere or your personal life that will help them along the line?
Yeah, most recently in the last few years, right at the start of the pandemic, I was feeling pretty downtrodden. It was a tough time for everybody, right? And I remember thinking, I'm not sure all the things I loved about the Constitution and our government. I was really questioning where we were as a country and why I chose, to get into this field. And maybe I should just move, to Bermuda and call it a day. And a friend, actually somebody who worked for me, recommended this book called The Soul of America by John Meacham. And John Meacham was a speechwriter for Reagan and worked on both sides of the aisle. So I immediately
Your cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly. I was attracted to it. But what I think the most important thing that I learned from that book, we tend to learn history after the fact. I mean, that's why it's history, right? Yeah. But because of that, we often, I think, are taught it in a way that this was supposed to be. Of course, the Union won the Civil War, and of course slavery ended, and of course, McCarthy was, finally stopped from his, terrible communist, hearings, and all these things that we think of is like, of course that was supposed to happen. It's, the way history was supposed to unfold. At the time, we didn't know that. When the founders signed their names to the revolutionary, the Declaration of Independence, they could have been hanged, and they didn't know that they were going to win the Revolutionary War. In fact, it was a pretty long shot that they were taking. And we think of these things like they were just meant to be, like they were just supposed to happen. the simple fact of the matter is that the country at the time didn't know the outcome when they were going through it. And I think about that book a lot. This country has been through a lot. It's been through harder times. It's been through bigger tests than even what we may be going through, now. And we got out of it. We came out of it, I think, the way that it was supposed to happen. And John Meacham in that book makes that argument pretty strongly. It's a reminder that our country's resilient. The Constitution and the way it was constructed is meant to bend a little. And we just should have faith that we have the constructs in place to really continue to be a successful country and get past some of our harder, more difficult times. And I'm confident of that. I remain optimistic that we'll do that. And Erik, I'm lucky in my job. I get to meet a lot of kids your age. My kids are your age. I get to talk with a lot of kids in college and high school, and my kids' friends. And I'm incredibly optimistic that you guys are gonna make it all better.
Hopefully we will.
Because Gen X, man, we were kind of apathetic. I don't know. We'll see. But maybe we have a chance, to keep working on it. But the point is that I have a lot of optimism. I think that the generation coming in is going to make some positive changes. And, at the end of the day, we'll survive whatever we have to go through, because this country was built to bend and not break.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming to talk to
Thanks
us about VPAP and about VCU.
Yeah, excellent.
Awesome. Thank you so much.